Hey, how are you? I am Chris Robin, aka at Detroit Beastie. That is my man, Keith Fleming, at Keith Fleming. Couldn't get any easier than that. And we are at Fantasy Six Pack here for a special super duper wild card weekend live broadcast to go over all this news and notes and highlights and ink I have. And so, Keith, how we doing? Hopefully, we can flip flop where our faces are. Doesn't matter to me. I'm not weird.
Oh, I think I can figure that out. I'm not the most technological. There we go.
There you go.
I'm so smart.
I was under your name. You were under mine. How are we doing this Saturday?
It's like what was the Jamie Lee Curtis movie? Trading was it you know what I'm talking about? Where the daughter, it's with Lindsay Lohan. Why am I blanking on it? But we were trading identities basically.
Absolutely.
I'm doing great.
That was 13 going on 30. But she
no,
was
no, that's Jennifer. That's Jennifer Gardner. I'm thinking of the one with.
She was Lindsay in one of those old ones with Dan Aykroyd, way back when. With Richard Pryor was in that Trading Places.
Yep.
And she says, "Let me see your hands." And Aykroyd was like a bum, right? Because he switched places with what's his name, Richard Pryor. And she says, "Let me see your hands," because he claimed to be this like big working man. She goes, "Your hands are smooth. You're clean. You're like a banker. You're not supposed to be in this position." And that was a long time. I don't even know. That might have been like 83. 84, maybe even earlier than that. So as we look at what we have for this weekend's slate of games, the one big story was it just came down maybe like less than an hour ago. The Pittsburgh Steelers at the Buffalo Bills has been switched. They flip-flopped it and they're playing Monday earlier. I believe kickoff is around 4:30, 5 p.m. After some nasty weather. There's a lot of snow. I know I texted you and everybody in Buffalo, they sent out like a tweet and everything on Facebook last night at 10 p.m. If you wanted to make like $10, $15 an hour, show up at Highmark Stadium and you can shovel some snow in advance of kickoff on Sunday at 1 p.m. But they said, "Oh, the heck with that. We're going to move it to Monday because the weather's so nasty." But then that begs the question, what are they doing in Kansas City? That one's tonight I believe kickoff is at 8 p.m. And granted, the weather, there's going to be little to no snow, but the weather, it's going to be like minus 35 or 40 degrees. I mean, just the skin exposure of that, it's dangerous. You get above football, right? There's football. It's fun. We can bet, but your skin is going to freeze and fall off in that kind of nature. So,
Chris, I'm a Southern boy. I've got a hand warmer because it's 40 degrees outside, inside my house right now in my pocket. I can't deal with it. I think it's honestly the safety with the snow, and they were just worried about the fans actually getting to and from the stadium. I really think that's what it ended up being about, because you're right. Like the weather is actually worse at the Chiefs game, minus, I think they're supposed to get like a foot of snow tomorrow, like during the game. I think that's what it was. Because those crazy Buffalo fans, they're going to show up no matter what.
Yeah, and the number one thing people are complaining about is, right, you go from, Pittsburgh at Buffalo Sunday at 1 o'clock, everybody's home. People are making plans. They're going to have people over. We're going to make nachos. We're going to hang out and chill and watch a football game. But they bumped it to Monday, which normally isn't that big of a deal because Monday Night Football throughout the season, kickoffs around 8:15, 8:20. People are home. They're resting. They're relaxing. And now this game is going to be basically in the middle of the afternoon. But it is
a holiday, though. It is
MLK Day, but it's that is a legit holiday, and Martin Luther King Jr.
I know what you're saying. Though everybody would be there Sunday compared to not everybody gets the holiday off.
Correct. Yeah, banks and banks are closed, and so is the libraries and stuff. But us regular 9-to-5ers, the people that have labor positions, if we have to go to work, so you're going to have to find a way around it. But it is wild card. It's a portion of wild card weekend. So I mean, I would say I trust the NFL and what they're doing, but I really don't.
I don't. Because why are we doing Monday anyway? I think it's so stupid. You're giving an unfair advantage to a team because one team's going to have one less day of rest. I understand why they're doing it. It's for money, because that's what everything is about. But I think it's so stupid that they have a Monday night game during the playoffs, because seriously, one of those teams is going to be at an unfair advantage. Now two of them. So it just I don't like it at all. And I don't like either that now tomorrow I was planning on watching football from 1 till like literally I'm going to bed. And now it's not going to be on until 4 o'clock. What the hell am I going to do? It's 40 degrees in Georgia. I can't go play golf.
There's going to
So
be a gap. We could broadcast tomorrow too, for all I care.
I'm down, man. You know that.
What I before we get into we'll get right into Cleveland and Houston in a minute here. But what I'm why is it you're in your house and it's 40 degrees? Don't you have a furnace? What are you doing?
No. I'm saying it's 40 degrees outside.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm a sissy, man. I can't stand cold weather. Once it gets below like 50, 60 degrees, I don't want to have anything to do with it. So seriously, I got on a bomber. I got my sweatshirt. I got my hand warmers. It's 69 degrees in my house, but I don't like how cold it is outside.
That's 40 degrees. I'm wearing jeans and a hoodie.
No
jeans and a t-shirt here in Detroit, Michigan. So as we look ahead to the games here and hang with us here, Fantasy Six Pack, we are live right now, Saturday afternoon. Hopefully folks will come in as word travels through social media that
Jamie's here. What's up, Jamie?
That Chris and Keith are live, and we're going to talk. And I have, I know Keith has everything covered as well, but I have some final score predictions, some recent betting trend stuff. I have some betting leans on each game, and if of course the DFS stuff. So let's start if you want. We hadn't talked about what we're going to do. We're just going to go with the flow. We'll be about 30 minutes, 45 minutes or so. But why don't we just start off? We can go game by game, or we can go position by position. But given the fact that
let's do a game by game.
There's 2 games today, right? And 2 tomorrow and then 2 on Monday. Let's talk in length about what we have going on today. That's why we're here. Cleveland is at Houston. That one kicks off in about an hour, what is it? About an hour and 45 minutes, something like that. Cleveland is at Houston as it stands right now. It looks to be, let me double check that. Of all my notes, that's the only one.
2.5.
2.5.
Oh, yeah, it's gone down to 1.5. So it continues to move. It was 3 just a few days ago.
Yeah, so it's basically 1 point, margin of error. It's basically a pick 'em. When you get to 1 point, it's a pick 'em. So when we look at this one, Joe Flacco, the old guy, we call him an old man, but he's actually a year younger than I am, and I'm 39. You'll have to wait, Jamie. And to be fair, I haven't bet on the Lions in a long time, and I'm not going to say anything about betting on them. I'll give you the facts when it comes to that game, but I'm going to leave Keith for his prediction because, again, I'm a very superstitious man, which we can cover later in the broadcast. But glad you're here, Jamie. Tell your friends and we'll hang out because we have so much good free stuff to give away in terms of content. And I have something very special. I will say at the end of the broadcast, I have a very cool thing I'm going to give away. It's it's an action figure kind of thing. And
who doesn't love free shit?
I'll leave it at that. When we look at this game, I mean, it's pretty easy, right? As I was saying, Flacco, he's 38 years old, was on his couch, comes back, and he's going to Houston to battle the Texans and CJ Stroud, the young kid who's had probably one of, if not the best seasons as a rookie quarterback in the history of football.
That's what I've ever seen, without a doubt. When you look at like the weapons he had, the mess offensive line, a rookie coach who's a defensive minded, like just phenomenal what he's done. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. And you want to see a story like that continue. But when you look at the Cleveland Browns, I have always said that Cleveland is the Lions of the AFC and Cleveland is the Lions of the NFC. So, switch it around like that. So you want to see something good happen like that. But when we look at this game, where's your head at in terms of any people you're plucking, right? Because maybe we should also be clear on not about everybody else, but specifically, Keith, what are you playing this weekend? You doing Saturday only, a couple lines?
No. I'm going to mess around, obviously. Like I do have a Saturday only lineup, but I think it's a great opportunity. This is a perfect size slate if you do the entire wild card weekend where there's just enough disparity where you can get a real leg up, but also not enough, like decisions and stuff you got to make where there's not a ton of variables and stuff. And I really think this is the kind of slate that if you don't get cute and you really know what you're doing and you do single entries, which I just can't hammer enough to people, you can have a very financially successful weekend. But this game is one that honestly, for the 3-day slate, it's Flacco and Njoku, and that's it. Like, that's the only guys I'm really messing with. I understand the backs are not bad. I'm not saying that Collins and Cooper are not, potentially going to go off. I just look at that there's better receivers that are not that much more expensive with much better matchups. But Flacco, to me, he's probably going to be the quarterback that I have in the most cash lineups. He's 6,100. It's been really a remarkable run, multiple touchdowns in every game he started. He scored over 23 points in his last 4, at least 17 in all 5 of his starts. We've already seen him light up this Houston Texans defense. This is a rematch from a game just a few weeks ago. Do remember, though, and I forgot this, Case Keenum actually started this game for the Texans. It was not C.J. Stroud, but I really like Flacco, and what I love the most about him is Njoku is, I think, my favorite play, period, in this slate this weekend because of his price. He's $5,600, and the bottom line is he's a number 1 receiver that you're getting at $5,600, and you can play him at tight end, you can play him at flex, you can get creative with it, but the numbers since Flacco has came over is just, it's unbelievable. He's had 4 games, 28 receptions, at least 6 in every one of those games. 39 targets, at least 8 in every one of those games. When do you get a guy for $5,600 who's going to get at least 8 targets for sure? 373 yards, that's almost 100 per, 93.25. And then the big thing, 4 touchdowns, 94 points on DK, almost 24 points per game. What I really like is the lowest point total he's had is 16.1. So that feels like his floor. And Dave Eddy always hammers this for us. You want to do 3 times. His floor is basically right around, 3 times his number. And what I love the most about it was against this Houston Texans. And I think that's going to make people think, well, maybe they got something figured out with Njoku. They don't. Amari Cooper had like 270 yards the first time that happened. That is not going to happen again. Like, I'm not saying Cooper's not going to have a good game, but he's not going to have 250 yards. And all those reasons I love Njoku. And then, oh, by the way, the Texans are as fantasy friendly to tight ends as any team in the NFL. They give up over 9 targets per game to tight ends and over 6.5 receptions. And then, oh, by the way, we got a guy 5,600 with a quarterback who's playing really well, who we know is going to probably get 7 to 10 targets, catch 5-6 balls. If he scores a touchdown, I honestly would be surprised if Njoku does not score 15 points. And I really think it's more likely he scores like 20 to 25. He's in every one of my lines. He is literally the only player. Well, actually, there's one other that is in every single one of my lineups that I've built so far. I love Njoku and Flacco. The rest of the guys, like, if I was going to go with this game, I would be looking at the lower priced options, because we got to assume that if you're the Browns, you want to take away Nico Collins after what you saw versus the Colts last week. And so there probably is value in like Dalton Schultz, who, by the way, he had a good game versus the Cleveland, who's number 1 versus tight ends. And that was without his quarterback, C.J. Stroud. And then obviously you need to check the status, but like Noah Brown, Robert Woods, I think any of those Texan guys could be good options, but I feel like the Browns are going to win, but it also feels like this is that trap game where everybody is saying the Browns are going to win. And if you really look at it, you got the best young quarterback we've seen in who knows how long versus a 40-year-old Joe Flacco. And I am worried, does he turn into a pumpkin, right? Or does C.J. Stroud just go, I'm that dude, and ball out? That's my one concern, but I do feel really good about Flacco and Njoku from this game for the full slate.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I believe maybe, someone in the comments will say it, or if you know it off the top of your head, Keith, when Flacco took the Ravens and they won that Super Bowl that year, I'm thinking it was like 2002, 2003, somewhere there. 2012? Oh,
wow. It was the Niners, yeah.
Okay, I was thinking it was when I was in high school. I was already done with college.
That was the first one with Dilfer.
Yeah, and that was to me one of the best playoff runs from start to finish by a quarterback.
13 touchdowns, no picks. It was like unbelievable.
I had seen in my lifetime as a fan. Of course, I saw Brett Favre go on runs. I was still around. I was still a kid when Steve Young and John Elway made that rush. But to me, when I was into football just as much then as I am now. Can't say the same thing when I was a boy or a teenager.
Right.
As I started to write and take notes and everything. Flacco, it will always be that man. He's got that experience. He's that chiseled, grizzled veteran. And I have Cleveland to actually win this game. And when you look at when it's a pick 'em, I'm going to take the team. I would take the team, that is getting points. And as we said, it was Cleveland, minus a couple points. Right now, it's Houston plus a point.
Houston's getting 1.5. Like I said, this was 3 points just like 2 days ago.
Yeah, I think Cleveland wins. So what would you think is comfortable? A touchdown, so 7.5 points would be. I think Cleveland wins by 8 points. I'm looking at like a 28-20 final, and I'm telling folks the final score now because I can work my way backwards. I'll give you the final score. And then I always do that often in my single game slate videos. Well, how did we get there, right? When you look at Cleveland and Houston, I think we're going to see a lot of, Joe Flacco passing. Personally, I have 19 to 20 completions, 245 to 250 yards, and a pair of touchdown passes.
He's had 40 plus pass attempts in 4 or 5, averaging 40 pass attempts per game. So I think that's a very safe number for him for his completions.
Yeah, because I think, when you look at Houston, they're around 12th, right? So they're not in top 10, but if you want to like stretch it a little bit, top 12
right.
to fit your narrative, you can have at it. They're 12th against wide receivers, 11th, against running backs. And I think that with Pierre Strong Jr., all these, these third stringers, carried the load the last few weeks in order for Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt to be very active in this game. And we know Kareem Hunt is always been, second fiddle, and he's okay with that, right? And with him and Jerome Ford has been a pleasant surprise for the Browns and for us, seasonal fantasy players and whatever you're into. Jerome Ford was a pleasant surprise this season. And when you look at what Ford and Hunt can do in unison against this Houston team, what is the best? I mean, this is football 101, right? To anybody who's out there that's watching, what's the best way to keep a young, high flying, strong armed quarterback off the field? Time of possession, you run the football. So give me Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt to really roll in this thing. And to be fair, Kareem Hunt was mentioned in bottom of the barrel this week. He's not going to, score a bunch of times and put up 100 yards, but he's going to be on the field a whole heck of a lot. Personally,
I think he's a great option for cash at his price. I really do, especially on DK.
Absolutely. And look at the, Amari Cooper, a little bit too expensive for my liking. He's $7,500 on FanDuel. DraftKings a little bit cheaper. But when you look at the list here, I would go out on a little bit of a limb here with Elijah Moore. And we saw, even David Bell, when he came into the league a few years ago, he was a stud, but he was shorter and But David Bell, when, called upon, he scored twice last week. And again, you can throw out week 18 because we're resting guys. We're going from there. But a little bit of that holds true because when you look at Cleveland, he might be added up into the starters, right? Wide receiver could be Cooper.
I know one of their receivers has already been ruled out. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name. But
me too. I would have said it by now, but I forgot. So I was trying to fill the void. I don't want any of that dead air. So it's Cooper, Moore, Bell, and Njoku. You cannot go wrong. To be fair, probably my favorite tight end of the week aside, top three, it probably would be Schultz, Tucker Kraft, and David Njoku. The guy's a monster. He reminds me of the Predator, that old 80s movie with Schwarzenegger. He's always wears his shirt like up here and he's got the braids, but he's just such a good dude. But when he's on the field, he will run you over and power bomb you, and it doesn't matter. So before we move on, I have
Cedric Tillman that's out. I'm sorry. I just
Cedric Tillman. Yeah. He was in bottom of the barrel, but I kind of deleted his name because he was out, but he was a nice little, move later in the season. But when we look at this game, give me the Browns to win this one 28-20. So if you wanted to, that's 8 points. If you add some hair on your chest, you want to put some hair on your chest, that's the first game, first leg of a parlay. If you want, like I said, if you got some stones, want to put some hair on your chest, take the Cleveland Browns -7.5, a good way to get some sweat going. We're about an hour and 40 minutes away from kickoff in Houston. That game is going to go as planned. They're in a dome. Everything is well in that one. And before we split and move on, I have some recent betting trends. I'll share my notes when we move on from there. Jamie, when you look at Marquise Goodwin, he's $4,200 on FanDuel. I'm just going to guess here. I'm sure you have all the DK prices
he's 3K.
in front of you. Yeah, 3K even there. And when you look at, like I said, Houston 12th overall against wide receivers, you're looking at 2 to 3 targets, if that, maybe a reception or two. I'm going to say 15 to 20 yards, and 20 yards would be a little bit ambitious for Marquise Goodwin, given everything that's going on here. And again, we go from, week 15, 17, 16, 17, 18, where everything's a muck, right? And it's like, GPPs, you can just throw stuff and darts and it's so fun. But wild card weekend, you might still have that little bit of a hangover from the end of the season where anything goes and, crazy is crazy. But this is the playoffs now. They're going to stick to a format, and the studs are you play your studs. Studs are your studs. And a guy like Marquise Goodwin would be better suited for a big GPP if you wanted to.
Or if you're doing, I think, a Saturday only slate, like if you're just doing these 2 games, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but I don't want anything to do with the pass catchers and QBs for the game tonight because there's only 2 games to choose from. Correct. They're going to be playing in a nasty storm. So in that sense, yeah, like I do like throwing them in there because then, you can load up with Collins and Cooper and Njoku. And then I would try to get like the running backs and the defense and maybe a tight end from the other game. But I don't want anything to do with wide receivers and QBs in that game or the Buffalo Pittsburgh, like especially for the full slate.
No, absolutely not. And it's good. And maybe at the end of this broadcast, we can go over some ideas and stuff. We're 20 minutes in it. We're going to be here for like 3 hours if we keep up this pace. Partly my fault. I like to talk. It's okay.
No, we like to talk. It's not
before we move on to the big the big daddy of tonight, the minus 40 degrees, Miami at Kansas City.
The frozen tundra.
Yeah. Look at that. Cleveland's 4-1 straight up their last 5. They're 4-1 against the spread their last 5. The over is hitting 6 of Cleveland's last 7 games. And when you look at Houston, 7-3 straight up their last 10. As I said, Cleveland 4-1 straight up their last 5. Again, this is the playoffs. They're all, the best teams make it in there. Houston 4-2 against the spread their last 6. And the under is hitting 6 of Houston's last 8 games. So the over has hit for Cleveland the last 6 out of 7, and the under 6 of Houston's last 8. So as I said, give me Cleveland final score around 28-20. Cleveland so
Alan
far
always talks about too, just that when you're getting over under, teams run the ball about 8 to 10% more in the playoffs than they do in regular season. So the unders tend to hit just a little bit more because of that. And I mean, that is consistent. He was talking about this earlier this week that we're going back now 4 or 5 seasons. It's across the board. Teams typically run 8 to 10% more in the playoffs than they do in the regular season, which again is even more reason to like the Kareem Hunt guys that you were talking about.
Yeah, it gives, the coaches time to think on the field and plan like in real game action. And one last little nugget that I found pretty cool. I got a bunch of these for each game. The Cleveland Browns have scored around 29.5 points a game on the road this season. So 29.5, I have them at 28. They are on the road. So a lot of this stuff makes sense. Recent betting trends. You might
scored 38 there just a few weeks ago.
You might brush them under the rug and go from there. But a lot of this stuff it's reasonable when you tie it up. Hey, Dave, glad you are here. Hey, Mike, if you're there, you want to send Dave the link.
Get your ass on here, Dave.
And say hi. We will not have you on if you're going to bog this sucker. Oh, we're already doing a good job bogging it down on our own. So never mind. Let's talk about Miami at Kansas City. This is the one I know, you got Stafford in golf. Stafford's back in Detroit and Michigan, but that is tomorrow. Let's focus on the here and now. From everything I've seen so far, since all these games were, set in stone, this is the game everybody's talking about for not even, because it's Mahomes and Tua, and Andy Reid and Mike McDonald, their head coach, going from there. It's because of the weather, how nasty it's going to be. Arrowhead is always rocking. It's an open stadium, but the way that it's curved up, it keeps the sound. And I don't know, a stadium's
like the loudest stadium, right? And the NFL,
without a dome,
outdoor, yeah,
that's outdoors. But when we look at this thing here, it's going to be, I believe, negative degrees. So how can you say, well, what's the weather going to be?
Wind chills could be like negative 40. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Last I look, and I have the weather app now. These temperatures are without the wind chill. So just at kickoff, what's kickoff? 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. It's going to be -6 degrees as the weather is without the wind. And so with the wind chill, it's going to be, in the -38 to 41, something like that. That is ridiculously cold. And, to be fair, Kelly popped in here. Her and I was texting her. I said, there was a time I used to plow the roads and salt and stuff like that way back when. And there was only a few times it was that cold. It was like -35 once in the middle of the night when I was plowing. And even that's scary. That's too much. Any exposure at all, your skin will freeze, and you can have frostbite, hypothermia. It's real life scary and it's not good. So we've seen, you go from people are comparing price tags to get into Ford Field tomorrow. You can't get in there less than $500, but at Arrowhead, you can get a cheap. Right?
Yeah.
Less than you can get
It's down even more?
like 35. I saw 34, 38 something bucks. And if I lived close to Kansas City, I would go for the heck of it. You can just, stay in the concourse and
this is where we
whatever.
disagree. No, I can't do it. I would
go
die.
I would go just to go. You don't have to stay there the whole time in a blanket and everything.
I'd be in the bathroom, because there's probably heat in there the whole time.
Yeah. If you could bring, I mean, I don't drink, but I know, it's been
that
said
night.
yeah, it warms your blood and your body up a little bit more. So if you could, bring in a flask of your own liquor, have at it. But when we look at this one, Miami at Kansas City, kickoff is at 8:10 p.m. As it stands now, Kansas City is the home favorite. They're minus around 5 last I looked. So Miami's coming to town. They're getting 5 points. Kansas City so far this season, they were down. They came back up. Now they're up again. Miami, kind of the opposite. They were like trending in the right direction. They hit some slides and they kind of, I don't want to say, backed into the playoffs. I would more say Kansas City. They both, let's just say it, both teams kind of not snuck in, but kind of, I don't know what that saying is. They snuck into the playoffs, haven't been playing the best of football, both teams, but hey, we have Miami at Kansas City. What's your first thought when we look at the quarterback, Tua and Patrick Mahomes? In comparison, it's not close, but the weather makes it a little bit more, does it even things out a little bit? I don't care if a team is from, Florida.
The issue is going to be, and again, I just want to get this out of the way, for the full DFS slate and the Saturday slate, stay the F away from these QBs and pass catchers. I understand it's Patrick Mahomes. I understand Tyreek Hill is Tyreek Hill. This weather is awful. You can get players that are in much better conditions in a dome. Don't do it. Just don't. Let other people make that mistake. Load up. Again, the running backs, I'm loading up this weekend. My running backs are going to come from that Pittsburgh-Buffalo game. They're going to come from this game. But the first concern I have is just Tua is now 0-10 in games that it's 40 degrees or lower. That's 40. Now we're talking about it's going to be like negative 40. So that is not good. Any chance that Miami has of winning this game, it's going to come down to them running the football, which ironically, last week, they were doing a very good job of that against Buffalo. And for reasons only Mike McDaniels totally knows, after that punt return touchdown, they never recovered and just stopped running the ball and ultimately lost that game. My one concern from this game from a DFS slate is because it's going to be a lot of running, I do worry that I'm just dismissing Devin Achane, who we've seen, the guy's averaging 8 yards per carry on the season. He has the ability to go nuclear, and he's 6,800. So that's the one guy I am concerned that I'm whiffing on. Pacheco is the guy, and the Kansas City or Miami defense. I actually like both the plays that I'm playing from this game. I love Pacheco. I think Pacheco is the most important part to Kansas City potentially winning another Super Bowl this year. They need him to be that workhorse. We've seen the issue with their receivers. Kelsey looks, whether he's lost a step, he's injured, whatever, he's not quite the same. They need Pacheco. And the last time we saw him, dude was balling out, had over 130 yards rushing, and the volume is just so up. I mean, it's something where he's averaging almost 18 rush attempts. His last 5 games, he's had double digits in all those. And then again, the defenses is the other thing I'd look at. This Kansas City defense, I don't think people respect them enough. They have not allowed 30 points this entire season. That's really remarkable in today's modern NFL to not allow 30 points any game. They get a lot of sacks. But I think this is going to be a chess. These are 2 really good coaches. And I think they're both going to try to not make mistakes because this is one of those games that with the weather and the elements, it's probably going to be just who can control the ball, to your point, control the clock and then not make mistakes because we know it's easier to fumble. It's tougher to catch balls, et cetera, in these type conditions. But it's a fascinating matchup. And I know that Kansas City Chiefs fans are terrified if this game is close in the 3rd or 4th quarter, just waiting for that guy that they let go, Tyreek Hill, to make that Tyreek Hill play where he catches a 5-yard screen or, a slant over the middle and he is gone because we know that Kansas City offense doesn't seem to have that gear that they've had in recent years when they can score whenever. I'm fascinated by this matchup, but again, I would kind of stay away from it overall if it's not the running backs or defense for your DFS slate this weekend.
Yeah, when we look at it from a sports betting perspective, and I'll throw some DFS nuggets in here shortly. When we look at it from a sports betting, their last 20 games, both teams have been almost identical. Miami 13-7 against the spread their last 20 games, and Kansas City is 14-6 straight up their last 20. So both teams have had more than 500 their last 20 games, where Miami right now 1-4 their last 5 games against Kansas City overall, which makes sense. I mean, Kansas City's been a powerhouse for several seasons in a row, and Miami's on the come up, and they had everything in front of them. We saw up there a shoe-in to win the AFC East this season with with New England taking a dive, and now Bill is out there. But here comes Buffalo, which we'll get to on Monday. They talk about just absolutely stealing a division title. I mean, it's unbelievable, like how so that's what I say when they backed into the playoffs a little bit.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Miami is very talented, and the one thing that plays in the playoffs, not only is it defense is phenomenal, but if you have a good defense and you can run the ball successfully, those two together are just magic. Though that's the recipe for winning in the NFL. And come to find out, the Miami defense has been outstanding, but they've had just succumbed to so many unbelievably bad injuries, with Chubb the last game of the season tearing up his knee or his ankle, if I'm not mistaken. Their stud Jalen Phillips at defense.
Yeah, they've already lost both their best 2 pass rushers. This team's had a ton of sacks this year. It's really a shame.
Even their second and third string stud pass rushers, that they're just a rotation of guys that would get at the quarterback. They're all just half of them are out, and it's just a bummer. But when we look at this one as it stands now, I gave you the point spread. It's Kansas City -5. The over under is at about 43.5 points, which is shockingly a little bit higher than I would have expected. When you look at Pittsburgh and Buffalo, that's at like 34.5 points, which is that's what you think.
It dropped, I think, 9 points in like 6 hours or something when the weather really started to take shift and people saw what it was going to be.
Yeah, that's nuts. And when you look at the unders hit in 4 of Kansas City's last 5 games, well, the over for Miami has hit in 12 of their last 14 or 16 games on the road, at least. I mean, this game there's not going to be a lot of overs going on in this one, but there are still little gems that we can pluck from this one from DFS formats, right? So you say, and a lot of people in the comments, Dave was there. He's got a heavy exposure to Devin Achane, rightfully so. But let's not forget about Raheem Mostert, who's he's 31 years old and still getting it done at running back. Granted, he hasn't played the last few weeks.
That's good though, right? Like he's rested up. It's the same way with Cooper Kupp for the Rams. Like I think that's good for these older guys when they haven't played. They're going to be fresh.
Correct. But Kansas City right now, 7th overall against running back. So while everybody flocks to Achane, and again, I've never seen a guy, get to the edge and just take off as quick.
He's averaging 8 yards per carry. I mean, I know he's only had like 110 attempts, but 8 yards per carry. It's insane.
And he can get downfield like I've never seen in my life. But when we look at things, there's an alternate world where Raheem Mostert is going to score a touchdown, tonight. And I have a nice parlay, an anytime touchdown parlay, and I got 7 guys in it, and they're all running backs. To be fair, and Mostert is on there. I'm not saying Achane won't score a touchdown, but for me, I'm going to fall back on, tried and true, right? Achane has been in and out of the lineup. He's been hurt. And the kid is young, and his time will come. And it might come to today. We might have a legends are made in the playoffs. They always say, right? Achane could have one of those days. But let's not forget Raheem Mostert and what he can do. I just don't think we can look past what he can get done. And when we look at, there was a time, a few weeks ago where Jalen Waddle has been inactive, so that made Cedric Wilson Jr. and even Braxton Berrios, you can sprinkle in. Those guys are just off the map, for tonight's game, because Waddle's going to be back. Hill, you get Mostert coming back, and the weather's going to be nasty. There's
Tua struggles in cold conditions anyway. Not that he has the strongest arm either, which we know in the wind you have to have.
He's accurate as can be, but
he is. But you really need a strong arm to play in the kind of winds that they're calling for. And I don't.
Correct.
That's not what I think of when I think of Tua. I think very accurate, but not a cannon for an arm.
Yeah, so while everybody's in, Kansas City and what they can do, I love the idea in a pinch. If you wanted to use Durham Smythe at tight end,
Right.
those small to intermediate passes to him might,
Definitely. Yep.
he might set up shop in the middle of the field, just running those little routes as they bide their time with a Shane and Mostert, and boom, Smythe, could catch 5 or 6 passes, 35 to 40 yards, and if one of them's for a touchdown, boom, Smythe. When you look at him, I got to flip the page here. Smythe 4.8 on FanDuel, only $3,000 on DraftKings. On the Kansas City side of things, there's not much more to say. It's Isaiah Pacheco, and we go from there. The one thing I will say, though,
you like their defense, though, too, right? For this slate,
absolutely, yeah.
2,900. I feel like they're underpriced. I'm with you too. Miami too at 2,800 on DraftKings is a really good value too.
Yeah, and when you look at what the Kansas City DST can do, they're 7th against running backs. They're 2nd overall against wide receivers. And this weather is kind of going to, like they always said in Seattle way back when Carroll and Lynch were playing there, the 12th man. The weather is going to be on Kansas City side big time in this one. And I just don't think that us as fans, while we're in our warm houses, in how effective the weather is going to be at really getting to Miami. And I could see a case here. It would be fun to see, Miami get on the field in warmups at like 6:30 or 7:00, no shirts on.
No shirt. Yeah, there's always that one player.
In Pittsburgh a few years ago,
yep.
and I mean it's nuts, and more than likely you're going to.
But it's a mentality, to your point. Like I understand why people do that. Like it seems insane, but it's like. I mean, it really is. It's mind over matter when you're in these kind of conditions.
Correct. And if you're active enough, you'll be okay. But as soon as you're on the sideline, it's just gonna kill you, right? And so you can't, Isaiah Pacheco's going to be in on this thing. Miami right now 4th overall against running backs. I think that is kind of, that's not really true because of all the defensive,
and they score so much, right? Like any team that scores a lot, I usually think that, of course, they're going to have technically a good run defense because teams can't run because they're throwing because they're down,
Correct. Yeah. And so give me, Isaiah Pacheco to carry the ball, 15, 16 times just as as his floor, right? We could see Pacheco touch the ball 20 plus times, and I wouldn't be surprised. Rashee Rice, he's
coming off a week rest too, as Pacheco. So
absolutely. And right now, Miami 21st overall against opposing wide receivers. But I just when I think of this game, Tyreek Hill, the weather's going to suppress. Weather can't suppress a talent, but I would imagine that Rice might be a little bit more active in the way that they use him. You could see what if Miami comes out and they have a completely different. They throw the game upside down and they're using Tyreek Hill in the backfield a little bit more. They're throwing small screen passes and wheel routes and things like that, and just get the ball.
McDaniel is smart at one of the smartest guys in football, so I expect something like that, that a new wrinkle.
A new wrinkle, correct. Yeah. So in this one, it's, to be fair, what you see is what you're going to get in this one. As it stands right now, Kansas City projected to score around 24.3 points. Miami, 19.3. I think Kansas City wins this one, but it's a little bit closer than people kind of see, right? And right now, if you were able to lock in Miami +5 or +4.5, I would take that all day. Granted, I have Kansas City winning, but I think Miami still covers. So in a perfect world, right, in a betting perspective, as we are in, Kansas City wins and moves on, but Miami can make you a few bucks. Take Miami and the points. Kansas City wins this one 24-20. So you get about a 4-point difference here. And a couple last recent betting trends, as I said, I think I actually said them all. Over in 12 of Miami's last 16 on the road.
That's crazy.
And the under has hit in 4 of Kansas City's last 5 games. So as we move on, you look at, Sunday afternoon, it was going to be Pittsburgh and Buffalo. We can save that one to the end, and we'll get right into the Green Bay Packers are heading to Dallas in Jerry World. And to be fair, of all the teams that have made the NFC playoffs, I think personally, the Green Bay Packers in this matchup matchup are best suited to win. Granted, if it was Detroit in this one, if it was the Rams there, I think of all the teams at this moment in time, the Packers have the best, available players to sneak one over in Dallas. And I could be wrong here. Sure, I'm wrong all the time, and I don't care. But as it stands now, the Packers are getting 7 points on the road in Dallas, and I've never disliked anybody. I've never disliked a team. I hate the Chicago Blackhawks when it comes to hockey, but that game, that 2-point conversion where did he report, did he not report? It really made me dislike the Dallas Cowboys. And then you see all their fans and everything. It's just like they go through life like in La La Land. Like, when Dallas is at home, they're a different team, right? When they're at home, because they have everything on their side. And I'm not a conspiracy conspiracy theorist, however you want to put it, but there's a little bit something weird that goes on when Dallas plays at home. It's pretty clear to me, but the Packers are just one of those teams where they beat the shit out of Detroit on Thanksgiving. But when we look at Green Bay on the road in Dallas, where are you going, Keith? What's your first, if you didn't have notes, I just put you on the air, boom. What's your initial gut reaction of this game?
It's going to be an uphill battle for Green Bay. And it's just Dallas. It's incredible what they've done at home. Since week 6, they've played 6 home games, 6 away games. They're averaging 38.5 points in those 6 home games, 24 on the road. And I do want to real quickly say, again, if you're doing the full slate, which I think you should, you need to target these games. Like this game and the Rams-Lions game, at least 50-60% of your players should come from these games because, the other games could end up becoming shootouts. It would honestly surprise me, but they could. I would be shocked if there's not 40-plus points scored in both of these games, this game and the Rams versus the Lions. The Cowboys, I agree with you that the one thing that should be concerning for the Cowboys is they haven't had success, right? Like this team has not got over the hump. And this Packers offense is frisky enough where I do think it's possible that if they can hang with them, say, going into that third, fourth quarter, them sphincters get a little tight. And the next thing the Cowboys start making mistakes. Mike McCarthy sometimes makes some questionable decisions. But I really do think the Packers are going to have a terrible time stopping this Cowboys offense. Dak is just so good at home. CeeDee Lamb is now it's hard to argue he's not the best wide receiver in football right now. And my favorite DFS play from the Cowboys side of this game is actually Brandon Cooks on DraftKings. And it's the splits. He's 4,900. Obviously Lamb is 9K, and I understand if you want to play Lamb is obviously going to score more points, but Cooks is basically half the price of Lamb. On the road, I talked about 6-6 since week 6. On the road game, he's averaging 8.9 points on DK. He's averaging 3.5 receptions, 24 yards. At home, he's averaging 4.5 receptions for 76 yards and scoring 17.8 points per game on DraftKings. He's scored 14.2 points or more on DraftKings in 5 of his last 6 home games. He scored a touchdown in 5 of his last 6 home games. And again, it's not hard to understand why the Cowboys are scoring 38.5 points at home and 24 points on the road. And if you're the Packers, I'm not saying they can stop CeeDee Lamb because they're not going to be able to, but you would have to assume that their priority is going to be to try to slow down CeeDee Lamb as much as possible. And I love that Brandon Cooks is that number 2 option. And he's got a pedigree. Like he's done this for the Rams. He's done this for the Patriots. Like Brandon Cooks has had big moments for several different playoff teams. He's arguably one of my top 2 or 3 plays this week on DraftKings period, because I think at 4,900, it's really safe that he's going to score like that 10 to 15 points, which he's basically done in every home game this year. And it would not shock me at all because the Packers give up a lot of plays. They're 24th versus number 2 wide receivers in fantasy this year in points allowed. I could see him scoring 20, 30 points and having a monster game. And then on the other side, what I like is there's a lot of value in the Packers, like whether it be Jordan Love, whether it be, any of their mini wide receivers. If Christian Watson plays, I think he is a unbelievable value on DK at 4,500. This is a guy that scored 20 points on DK his last 2 starts. He scored 4 touchdowns in his last 3 games. If you think the Cowboys are going to score, which I believe they will, because that's what they do at home, the Packers are going to be in a situation where they're throwing, and that's exactly what you want in this kind of slate. You got receivers like Wicks, you got Reed, you got Watson, you got Dobbs. I mean, you got Kraft. You can take your pick. They're all, relatively low priced, and they're going to be in a situation where they're forced to throw. That's really good for them. So again, for me, it's Reed is probably the guy that I'm going with, unless I hear Watson is 100% from the Green Bay side. But if I hear Watson's a full go at 4,500, I love, say potentially playing Brandon Cooks. And if you want to play Lamb, obviously you'd have to spend down at QB and other positions, but then running it back with, either Reed or Watson on the other side. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. And, Joe Matz talked about on our show last night. He thinks that you can make a case Jordan Love may end up being the best QB option at his price this week because if you assume they're going to be down, he's going to be throwing a lot. And Jordan Love has had a lot of big fantasy games this season.
Absolutely. And we've seen people, share graphics of if Lamar Jackson is MVP or Brock Purdy was in the mix, right? And they share what Jordan Love did this season, all the yards and all the touchdowns. But to me, this one is about 2 things. It's about the first quarter for Green Bay. They had the highest point differential in the first quarter of any team in the league this year. They get out of the gate quick and they just hang points in the first quarter. I'm not here to say that Green Bay, their only hope is to score 30 points in the first quarter and then just sit on a lead and go from there. But they couldn't get out to, 14-0, 17-7, 21-17, something weird. But to me, the Green Bay Packers got to start fast, and they have all season, so that's good. My second one, it's the number 21. If you look at the Green Bay Packers, the Dallas Cowboys, they're 1-5 when they've allowed 21 or more points this season. So to me, which is strange, right? So if Green Bay can get to 21 points, it's almost like it's not a lock, right? Dallas is 1-5, right? So to me, that's the tough part. Can Green Bay get to 21 points? And if you look at across the board, that should be a piece of cake. But when we look at the Dallas defense, their cornerbacks and their secondary guys take a lot of risks, but there's risk reward, right? We get the Deron Bland. He's got 6 pick sixes. He set the records and stuff. He takes a lot of risk, and Diggs was like that last year or the year before, right? He's got all these interceptions and touchdowns, but defensive touchdowns, but how much receptions and yardage and touchdowns has he given up in coverage, right? So to me, it's got to be about Jordan Love and this trio of wide receivers, and it could be a quartet with 4 of them if Watson, Wicks, Dobbs, and Reed. These guys in unison together have been fantastic, and it's all about the rookie from Michigan State in Jaden Reed. The way they've used him, it's like
mini Debo, man. I love him, man.
Yeah, I that's what I was gonna. I don't want to say like Deebo Samuel has broke the mold. There's always been, people that they've used it, but Deebo Samuel's been like,
he's a unicorn for sure.
He's been an ace in how they used him. And in a way, they're using Reed and they're having success with him in the same way. So you get the option of with Aaron Jones back and healthy. That is a huge bump, a huge boost to the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Jones, granted, he plays on a division rival, and I've never disliked the Packers. I've always respected the hell out of them and what they can do and the sustained success they've had, numerous coaches and quarterbacks and everything. And guess what? The Packers are always in the mix for a division title, division championship. But to me, it's got to be about feeding the ball to Aaron Jones and letting A.J. Dillon do his thing on the field as well. And I'm not saying that the Packers have to have a perfect game to beat Dallas here. They just cannot fall behind, 14 plus points. I think 10 points is reasonable, but if they down 14, 17 points. It might be time to change the channel because I don't think they're suited to come back in a way, especially being.
But if you think that's going to happen, that's great for DFS and why you should have Packers in your lineup, right?
Absolutely. I have, as it stands now, I have Jordan Love, throwing the ball 35 to 40 times, completing 21, 22 passes, around 250 yards. And again, this is kind of floor stuff, given what we can expect here, and at least 2 touchdown passes. Again, what are the chances that Love can get over the hump and get that 3rd touchdown with his legs here? And given his price tag, I love what your co-host said last night. It's absolutely true. He's 7-6 on FanDuel, 6-3 on DK, and only $29 on Yahoo. But as it stands now, Dallas Cowboys, from a sports betting perspective, I locked Dallas in at -7.5 points. You can actually get, if you want to make a crazy parlay, as I was saying with Cleveland, you want to put some hair on your chest. I have Cleveland winning by 8. You want to just get within a half a point here. I have Dallas at just dismantling the Cowboys, right? 35 to about 17 or 20 here. So give me the Dallas Cowboys -7.5. And when you look at it, I have the Cowboys winning by, what did I say? Let's just call it 35 to 20. You're looking at a difference of 15 points here. So if you wanted to, I would be okay with taking the Cowboys -14.5. They're probably tremendous odds. It's got to be plus, I would say plus 450, 480 if I had to guess.
If you're doubling whatever the spread is, for sure.
Something like that. So give me the Dallas Cowboys to win
Before we move out of this game, because I want to ask you, because me and Joe talked about this at the very end of our show. Are we sleeping on Tony Pollard this week? The Packers have had real issues with the run for as long as I can remember. He is as cheap as, I think he's 6,100 on DK.
7-8 on FanDuel.
7-8 on Fan. I mean, are we sleeping on Tony Pollard? Because I didn't even consider him, to be honest, until like last night when Joe brought it up.
Well, truth be told, he's in my my anytime touchdown parlay. I do think he finds the end zone. But I've loved Rico Dowdle all season. Again, he's in. You can read bottom of the barrel. It's out now. I'll share it again, maybe when we're done with this broadcast. But Tony Pollard is going to be used a lot. And right now, the Green Bay Packers are. Let me double check. The Green Bay Packers are the Dallas Cowboys and Packers are 19th, against opposing wide receivers. I have Pollard 14, 15 carries, around 60 to 65 yards, finds the end zone on the ground, and around targeted 4, maybe 5 times. He catches 3 passes for about 20 yards. So you're looking at 80 all-purpose yards and a touchdown and 3 receptions. So you're looking at 8 points for the yardage.
That would be a good cash play for sure at 6,100.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's definitely going to get 3 times his price if that's projected game, and he could even catch more passes. Have a big run. I'm kind of disappointed that running back I think is by far the toughest position this week. Don't you agree? Like it's just kind of a mess. And I didn't really consider Pollard, and I mean it's kind of crazy that he's 6,100. I mean, who would have thought Aaron Jones, who I know has played great the last couple of weeks, but Aaron Jones, who missed practically the entire season, would be $200 more than Tony Pollard when Pollard has a much better matchup.
Yeah, Aaron Jones, $7,000 on FanDuel, and on DraftKings, Aaron Jones is, as you said, $200 more. He's $6,300, and he's $800 cheaper than Tony Pollard. But I would have no issue playing Aaron Jones and Pollard in the same lineup in this one because again, it's indoors in comparison to the Pittsburgh Buffalo game, Miami Kansas City, things like that. And you look at Cleveland Houston, I think it's going to be a different kind of issue here. But when you look at that, when Tony Pollard's absolutely in the mix, but probably outside my top 5 of favorite running backs to play in this one, because it's kind of it's meat and potatoes kind of play. You want to take some risks in GPP. I mean, cash games, absolutely, but it's probably Jones, Jamar Gibbs, and James Cook are my top 3.
I actually like Dowdle if you're looking at like a GPP because he's so cheap on DK. Say the Cowboys do get up big, he gets 10, 15 carries, scores a touch. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that there's some real upside potential to that. And, I mean, it looks like they've been using him a little bit more, even when games are competitive here recently. So
yeah, because he's quick and he could. He could take it to the house. I mean, if that's the case, then we got to look at Turpin maybe a little bit.
right.
Returning punts and kicks and who knows. But as I said, Dallas is going to. I have Dallas winning around 30. Let's just call it 35-17. That's what I had written down. I gave him 3 more points because I felt bad at the moment a few 5 minutes ago. But give me the Dallas Cowboys. And you look at some recent betting trends. Green Bay 5-3 against the spread their last 8. Cowboys 2-4 against the spread their last 6, and over 6 of Green Bay's last 7. And you look at the Cowboys under in 4 of their last 5 games. 4 out of their last 5 games. So it's something's fishy when Dallas plays at home. It's just, I hate it. Let's move on. We'll go to, let's talk about the Lions. And we have some questions. Is Laporta going to play? Everything I've seen, he was seen practicing in Allen Park the last few days.
You're a Lions fan. What are they thinking? Like, everything I've read is you can seriously, with the kind of injury he had, even though it was not technically serious, it does make it much more likely if something happened, he would tear his ACL, PCL, MCL. I think it's insane that they're considering playing. I think this is a centerpiece of a very young, very good franchise that is on the rise, and there is no way I would put him in that situation.
I think it's all a ruse. There's no, I honestly think Brad and Dan are smart enough, and he's not going to play, but they put a brace on him and they can.
No, I understand. Yeah. I mean, I get the dog and pony show. I really hope they don't play him though. Because I'm such a big fan of the kid and I don't want him to get hurt.
They can let him run around in practice. It's all controlled, and you can pull up and stop when you want. And, as Jamie was saying, there is some value to be had at the tight end position for the Lions, a la James Mitchell and even Brock Wright.
Brock Wright is my favorite play this week. If Laporta does not play, he'll be in every
absolutely. Both mentioned in bottom of the barrel. We forget what he did against the Jets last year. It was like a 4th down, and he took it like 40 yards for it. It was one of those, Ben Johnson specials, their offensive coordinator, where the Jets didn't see it coming, and we go from there. When we look at the Lions, Sunday night primetime football, they're hosting Matt Stafford. The narratives, I'm sure if you're like Keith and I, we've listened to all the radio, we've seen all the talk on radio and sports TV and all this.
I'm legit excited about this game, and I don't have a dog in the fight, but this is what's great about football right here.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like a scripted in a way.
Yeah, it is. It's WWE, It's like Rick Rude and the Macho Man.
Absolutely. So when we look at this one right now, the Rams come in, and Detroit is a home favorite, first home playoff game in 30 years.
The place is going to be insane, right? Like, how loud is that place going to be?
I can't even. It's going to be nuts. It's the top might blow off. I've been in Ford Field. I've been to Ford Field in some big spots, but it's all been regular season stuff. Thanksgiving is probably, the biggest games I've ever been to. Actually, let's call it a few years ago when they blew out Denver, maybe like 5 years ago when they had, Ndamukong Suh and all these guys. And then I would say when Stafford was quarterback and they were playing the Chargers and they beat the Chargers, and that was it was Christmas Eve, like 5 or 6 years ago. They beat the Chargers, and that was their end. They got into the playoffs by beating the Chargers, but it's still a regular season game. So now you have primetime Sunday night.
Amazing.
It's going to be nuts. Yeah,
I'm excited for you guys. I really am.
I can't wait for it. But when we dig into this game from a sports betting perspective and a DFS perspective, I think we get an absolute just a shootout, back and forth. This game has the highest team implied point totals. The highest over-under is at 52 points. The second best would be the last Green Bay and Dallas at 50.5 points. But this one, we get Stafford and Golf. I'll leave the narratives alone. Anybody watching, I'm sure, is aware of that.
Right.
But when you look at this game, Keith, where are you going from what are you thinking? Are we looking at values? Are you playing a revenge narrative? Where are you going?
It's all. So I think that, again, I like Flacco, but if you're not using Flacco at QB, your QB should absolutely come from this game, whether it be Stafford on DK, he's 6,400, or it's Golf, who's 62. I'm pulling for you guys, obviously, because, Rams just won a Super Bowl. You and Dave are my buddies, but there's a lot of bad signs for the Lions secondary, and good news if you have Stafford or any of his receivers. The Lions are 32nd in the NFL they have basically allowed the highest QBR to opposing QBs when targeting wide receivers. The Rams are 7th in yards per play. The Lions are 23rd in yards allowed per play. The Rams are 4th in red zone scoring. The Lions are 29th in points allowed in the red zone. The Rams are 8th in first down game. Lions 22nd in first downs allowed. And the Rams are 10th in passing yards, and the Lions are 27th in passing yards allowed. So I go back and forth whether I'd want Stafford or Goff, because Stafford obviously has a great matchup. He's thrown it at least 31 times his last 7 games. He's had 15 touchdowns over his last 6. But if you really think the Rams are going to have this easy time of moving the ball, again, kind of what I was talking about with those Packer receivers, I would rather have Goff, who's $200 cheaper, because if they're down, they're going to be obviously throwing a lot. And on top of that, Goff is also just an unbelievably different quarterback indoors, at home, compared to on the road. Much better. So I'm going to have one of those 2 QBs in almost any of my lineups. I'm also all in on Cooper Kupp. I know a lot of people are fearful because of Puka. I get that. He's a few $100s cheaper. For me, this is just all about Kupp, 7+ targets, 9 of 12 games this season that he's played. He scored a touchdown in 3 or 4. But it's all about what he did with Matthew Stafford in the playoffs when they went to the Super Bowl and won it just a couple of years ago. Played 4 games. His per game averages 10.5 targets, almost 9 receptions per, 119 yards, and 1.5 touchdowns per. And if you remember, that was a Rams team that, they had OBJ, but they really didn't have a lot of other weapons, to where this Rams team, it's not like you can just zone in on Cooper Kupp, because there's Puka, there's Demarcus Robinson, there's Kieran Williams. I just think that they rested Kupp for a reason. I think they know that Kupp is the most important part of them potentially making a run in these playoffs. And I just think Kupp at 7,500 on DK, he's a real value, because St. Brown is the safest play in DFS. He's another guy that I'm going to try to have both Kupp and St. Brown in my lineups, because St. Brown is so good at home. His numbers at home are absurd. Scored at least 18 points in every game. He's had at least 9 targets in every home game. He's caught at least 6 passes in every home game. He caught at least 70 receiving yards. But the only thing about St. Brown is he rarely has the 30, 40 point game, to where I do think Kupp could have that game, and he's only 7,500. So I definitely want those guys. But then what I love about this game is there's so many bargain places are great too. Demarcus Robinson is 3,600. They set him last week. The last 5 weeks he's been on fire. And then the great thing is, not great for Lions, but the Lions 24th versus number 3 wide receivers in fantasy. Demarcus Robinson, obviously the number 3 receiver for the Rams. Also, Robinson averages almost 1.5 yards more per route run versus zone. Lions run one of the heaviest zone coverages of any team in the NFL. Same deal for Cooper Kupp, who's much better versus zone. But then on the Lions side, I think there's also real value, because we know Raymond's out. I don't believe Laporte is going to play. So Reynolds for me at 3,800 on DK, he's had 9 points or more on DK in 7 games this year. He's had 12 points or more in 2 20-point games. And they have to throw it to somebody. And I love Jameson Williams. I love his talent. Maybe this is his breakout game. But the bottom line is he seems to score 8 to 12 points every game. That's what he scores. He hasn't had that breakout to where Reynolds actually has, and he's cheaper. But it's Brock Wright is the guy that, I am giddy if Laporta does not play, because I can get a guy at 3K versus one of the worst defenses in the NFL versus tight ends. And, Laporta had this amazing season, obviously. 10, touchdowns, 90 catches, 900 yards. But in this offense with Jared Goff, it should not surprise us, because I went back and looked last year. Goff threw 13 touchdowns to tight ends last year. TJ Hawkinson only played 4 games. They threw more touchdowns to tight ends last year with Shane Zylstra and Brock Wright and James Mitchell, and 4 games of TJ Hawkinson. In total, Goff has thrown 59 touchdowns the last 2 seasons. 24 of them have gone to tight ends. That's a 40% clip. And you're getting a guy for 3K when you know that they're already missing other passing options. I'm serious. Wright will be in every one of my lineups if Laporta does not play, and I'm probably going to do the 2 tight ends with Njoku, and it just opens up to where I then can play Kupp and St. Brown, which I really want to do, and afford to play either Goff or Stafford. But this is the game that I feel like if you don't have 4 or 5 players, you're probably going to miss out, because it's not like this Rams defense is great either. And I would be shocked if both teams don't score 25 plus points. And I think there's a chance it's just one of those epic games that it's like 38-30, kind of like that Bills-Chiefs game a few years ago, where it's just who has the ball last, and you're just going to reap the benefits. And in a 6-game slate, if you pick the right game, which I really think this is the one, you can get a real leg up, especially with those cheaper guys like Brock Wright, Demarcus Robinson, Reynolds.
Yeah, you laid everything out beautifully. I got no reason to name any values or points or anything like that. I'm going to go at it from this. When we look at everything we've seen so far this week, and again, we get one more full day before kickoff tomorrow night at what is it, 8:15, 8:20? I think Sunday Night Football's 8:20.
Thank God it's not on Peacock like the Chiefs.
Wild, yeah. When we look at this one, it seems like Goff is going to be, and again, this is all just my personal opinion, it feels like Goff is going to be more dialed in. When we look across the board the last week or so, all this media coverage and news and articles and everything, it's like Stafford's up there and he's laughing, right? I know I'm the villain when I walk in there. And him and his wife, Kelly, are still very good. They're still attached to the city of Detroit. They're great people. They still have, youth centers and things that they still, they send money back. They're still connected to the city. They're just good people. We've heard Stafford talk about it. He was drafted. He was like 20 years old. He's like, I grew up here. I got married. I had my kids. My wife, Kelly, had her brain surgeries here when she, and the city of Detroit and the people were always so good to me. It's so nice. I'll always be connected there. There's no ill will towards Stafford, but it seems like it may be a little bit getting caught up in all the spectacle. Like he's laughing, he's having fun. And maybe if that's your thing, you want your quarterback to be good and loose, but maybe the Rams and McVay, it's like they're looking at a little bit ahead too much. They already have this game kind of, we know what we're going to do. We're going to not roll over them, but we're going to win and we're going to move on. Right. And when you look at the Lions here, we've got nothing to lose in a way, right? I shouldn't say we.
That crowd is going to be insane too, which that's the one thing I don't think people are accounting for enough. Like that is going to be worth at least 3-4 points. That crowd is going to be insane.
Yeah, and the Lions have nothing to lose. It's just like this is what they're looking for. It's just this game, one and done for all I'm concerned. And it is. It's the playoffs here. So to me, you look at Dan Campbell as the head coach. He's going to be sticking around, but their defensive coordinator, their offensive coordinator, they might be moving on. They've already been asked. Other teams have reached out to them. So again, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing because they're going to put on an absolute show and they're going to go for it. They're going to leave no stone unturned. They're going to go for it. If they move on to the next round, they'll attack that when they get there. They're putting all their eggs into this basket for this game. And that's what I think is the most beneficial for them, where the Rams are coming in there. We've already won a Super Bowl. Not that they're going to let that deter them.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
They have bigger and better plans, right? The Lions have never tasted any.
Goff has got to have a chip on his shoulder. Like he's been the forgotten guy, and people forget that he was left for dead. The Rams basically said, we don't want you. Right? Like when they made that trade, they're like, you cost us the Super Bowl. That's basically what Sean McVay said. And I believe Jared Goff has been basically waiting for this opportunity to show him, like, look, dude,
personally speaking, that was to be fair, that was one of the best business decisions I've seen an NFL team make in the last 15 or 20 years. They swapped out
win-win
and some picks and boom, they were the definition of we're one piece away. They are the poster child for that. They put in Stafford and boom, they go on a run, win a Super Bowl, come back, they draft Puka. Here we go. They didn't have some success in they had the hangover, the Super Bowl hangover. But when we look at the Lions going in this one, Rams 6-1 against the spread their last 7. Detroit 5-1 against the spread their last 6. The over is hit in 6 of the Rams' last 7, and the over is hit in 7 of the Detroit's last 9. If you're not taking the over in this game, I can't help you. When we look at the final score in this one, I have it around 31-27. I'll leave it there. No, I don't. I'm not going to tell you who wins. Fine. I know. I mean, I have a favorite, but it's going to be 31-27 is your final score. You can plan around that. You could take the
I want to
over.
say one other thing
That's
real
my
quickly
final.
is I love that the Lions went out and said, fuck it. I know we're probably not going to get the number 2 seed, but we're going to play to win week 18 because that's what we do. The Rams went out and just punted.
Rested.
I think that may be the difference. I know people always assume that, oh, well, you know, look what happened with Laporta. To me, you prove to your players, like, we play to win, period.
Yeah.
Like, we show up and we're going to play. And I love it. I love the heart of the Lions. Like, I really do appreciate this team. And I do. I think that that home crowd's going to be the difference. I think it's going to be a high scoring game, but I think the Rams end up kicking a late field goal, win like 31-28. 35, 31, something like that.
Resting is just bad news. You go back to last year's baseball playoffs, not a single, the teams
the Bravos.
Yeah, they had the best. I mean, it's crazy what, everything. Resting can be good, but do you play and you risk injury and things like that? But we'll move on. Give me the final score, 31-27, and we'll go from there. As we move on, we'll go to Monday Night Football. We'll start with Pittsburgh and Buffalo because they moved it to Monday night at, I think, what'd we say, 4:30, 4 p.m.
Yeah,
4:30.
Yeah, like basically the same thing they're doing tomorrow. They'll do, and today. Actually, I guess it'll be 3 straight days of the 4 o'clock and then the 8 o'clock game.
Yeah, it's nuts. And anybody, you're fooling yourself if you think Pittsburgh, do they have a chance? As it stands right now, Pittsburgh is going on the road. They're getting 9 points. Last I looked, it could be maybe 10 by the time
it was 10 this morning. Let me check real quick.
By the time we have kickoff tomorrow, but this one
it's 10 points right now.
That's nuts. And the over-under is at 34, so we're looking at a low-scoring game. To be fair, I think Buffalo has a chance to cover the over on their side alone, right? It's at 34. I have Buffalo scoring around 31 points. So to be fair, we just need Pittsburgh to hit a field goal. If all we need is one touchdown from Pittsburgh, and we can go from there. Any thoughts on this game when we look at from DFS perspective? I have some ideas when we get to betting and recent betting trends.
For me, it's stay away, except for I really do like Najee Harris. And if you really believe in Buffalo like you do, I like James Cook a lot because, again, this is a game that they moved this game, and it's still the forecast going to be 15 degrees with 15 to 20 mile per hour wind and some snow flurry. So, I mean, I know Josh Allen can throw a football through a brick wall, but he also is very prone to turn the ball over. And if Buffalo's smart, it's like you've been trying to get this home playoff game for forever, right? Like this has been the next piece. It's like they wanted to get Kansas City at home. They're one win away from getting that. To me, like I hope they're going to play smart. I think this is going to be one of those games. I'd be shocked if, it ends up getting a lot going back and forth. I think both teams are going to try to run it. I do really like Najee Harris at 5,400 just because, Dave Eddy, what's up? Volume is king. 19 carries or more in 3 straight games. At 5,400, you can't beat that. And Buffalo, there has been times they've been run on. And honestly, same thing for the Steelers. I do think that like Josh Allen, if he wasn't so expensive, I think on FanDuel, I really would like him actually, because I think he's going to have a big rushing day. I think he's going to score a touchdown, at least on the ground. But overall, again, it's a game that defense, if you want to talk to tight ends, I understand maybe like a Dalton Kincaid fire move because it's a lot of underneath stuff. I don't want anything to do with quarterbacks. I don't want anything to do with wide receivers.
I like both Pittsburgh running backs, right? Najee Harris and
Joe's
Jaylen
really
Warren.
high on Warren too, which you made a good point that if they get down, that's even better for Warren, who's more of the pass catcher.
Yeah, I've had Jaylen Warren's been in he's an all-star. He's an bottom of the barrel all-pro. He's probably one of the more talked about running backs for this season in my work and in my content. Only 5'6" on FanDuel, 5'1" on DK. You're looking at 10 to 11 carries, 3 to 4 receptions. I have Warren around 80 to 85 all-purpose yards, and Najee Harris, same thing, 65 to 70 rushing yards and around 10 to 15 reception yards. Pittsburgh. So both of those guys, I mean, again, if Pittsburgh's going to be unable to move the ball through the air, I mean, you got George Pickens.
He also got Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, so it's like, let's just stay away from the wide receivers and the tight ends, and we'll just, hammer home the running backs for Pittsburgh, regardless of what the final score is going to be. And on the Buffalo side of things, you're right. It's got to be James Cook. I like the idea of Khalil Shaker. He's only 5'8".
I do too. Actually, you're right. He's a really good value.
He's only 5'8" on FanDuel, 3-4 on DK, 4 to 5 targets, 3 to 4 receptions, 40 yards. And again, I have the Buffalo Bills winning this one, 31-17, almost identical final score as the Green Bay.
You're the king of this stuff. How many carries does Fournette get? Because they've been using him more and more. Do you think that he gets 5-10, touches? I
wouldn't say 10. I would say, okay. I was going to say 4 to 5 carries, maybe. And one or two of those would be inside the red zone,
okay.
And we go from there. Let's say it's first and goal from the 2 or 3 yard line, and James Cook, gets stuffed. They bring out some other personnel and they give Leonard Fournette a try. I think that would happen once, twice would be special if Fournette gets 2 carries inside the 5 yard line. Does he make good on one of those?
What a great nickname, Playoff Lenny. I just love it.
I think if we get a case here where it's inside the 5 and James Cook's, stalls on the first down, and if they get stuffed on 2 plays, they're going to say, fuck it. And, that's when you get a Josh Allen touchdown with his legs, taking the, left and touching the pylon, something like that. I could see a case like that, but I would not say Fournette gets, upwards of 10 carries. I would be more comfortable with 4 or 5, and we'll go from there. When we look at some recent betting trends, the over in 4 of Pittsburgh's last 5 games, can kiss that goodbye in this one. The under in 7 of Buffalo's last 10 games. I like the over in this one. Buffalo could carry that one on their own. As I said, give me the Buffalo Bills 31-17, probably one of the absolute no-brainer final score plays of the entire weekend. And we'll move on to the last game of super duper wild card weekend.
The battle of who cares less. Can you ever remember 2 teams in worse form meeting in the playoffs? Like 2 teams literally that are just collapsing.
Yeah, Philadelphia Eagles head to Tampa Bay to battle the Baker Mayfield and the Bucks in Raymond James Stadium, Monday Night Football at 8:15 p.m. AJ Brown has already been labeled out.
What is going on, man? He went dark on some stuff's up.
He took everything off, off all, scrubbed all, and for a player to be deemed out, 2 days before kickoff, weird. And he hasn't been, he's not on the IR. I didn't even know AJ Brown was hurt to begin with, and now he's out. It's not good. And talk about backing into the playoffs. They're like 1-5. Their last 6. The last 6.
They were 8-1. I mean, it's unbelievable. They were 8-1.
They almost missed the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying.
That's nuts. That's nuts to me. And when we look at this one, I mean, it's just everything. All signs point to Tampa Bay winning this one at home in one of the most monumental collapses of modern day football. I mean, it hasn't happened yet. Once if Philadelphia gets eliminated in wild card round, it will go down as one of the top 3 monumental collapses of all time by a football team to start 8-1 and then just everything end in Tampa Bay, who made the playoffs by the skin of their teeth the last week of the season, right? In week 18, win and you're in kind of thing. And when we look at it, you get Baker Mayfield against Jalen Hurts. It shouldn't even be close. And you get Baker Mayfield against the Eagles 31st. The Eagles are 31st against battling opposing quarterbacks. And Jalen Hurts, Tampa Bay's 23rd overall against opposing quarterbacks here. So we get a game where it's going to be, I have the final score here, 21-20 is the final score. So you're looking at 41 total points, the over under within a field goal, 2 to 3 points, and we'll go from there. But what are you thinking in this game from a player perspective when it comes to DFS formats, Keith? Philadelphia at Tampa Bay. It's just like really weird and uncomfortable to me.
It is. And that's a perfect word for it, because if Baker Mayfield and Jalen Hurts were healthy, this would be the game that I would be all over, because neither of these teams can cover tight ends. Neither of these teams can cover wide receivers. They're not great. Like, these are 2 bad defense. Philadelphia is by far the worst defense in the NFL right now, like the last 4 or 5 weeks. The issue is Baker's got a messed up hand, which that's not good. And he left the game briefly last week with a lower body injury. So I would normally be thinking, man, Mike Evans versus this Philly secondary with Darius Slayton torched him twice in the last month, but I can't trust it. Like, I just can't. So I'm looking at then like the value plays, because these are really bad defenses. And there are some values. Like, you can go with, Quez Watkins, you can go with Trey Palmer. I actually think Godwin on DraftKings is not a bad play. He's 6,200, last 46 targets, 30 receptions, 5 straight 10-plus point games, averaging almost 17 per game. And with Baker being limited, it's just going to be more underneath stuff. And that's going to obviously be Godwin. Now, it would not shock me if Evans ends up having a monster game, but I don't know if Baker can throw the ball. The guy, though, that I've really, since the news about A.J. Brown is Dallas Goedert. I mean, you would have to assume, obviously I know Devontae Smith too, but Smith's banged up. And he's 6,700, which again, we're getting into that range where, like, you got Cooper Kupp and all these other guys that I'd much rather spend $700-800 and have them over Devontae Smith with, Hurts being banged up and the way the Eagles look. But Dallas Goedert, 4,800, Tampa Bay, second worst defense on DraftKings versus tight ends. He's had 24 targets his last 3 full games. And that was with A.J. Brown playing. 20 receptions over his last 4, 14-plus points on DK in back-to-back games. And I think, again, what sucks is A.J. Brown's never missed a game with the Eagles. I went back and looked. So I was like, man, who's gonna see the uptick? We don't know. So, like, there's just so many unknowns in this game that if you're in, like, obviously a non-cash, a multi-entry one, have at it. Like, this could be the game that you go all in on and ends up being a shootout because these defenses suck and you win a bunch of money. But if you're talking about for cash games, I can't trust anything really other than these cheap plays, which again, there are some good ones. I do like Trey Palmer. I do like Quez Watkins. You could even talk me into Julio Jones, for Christ's sake, now with A.J. Brown out. And I think Goddard, especially on DK at 4,800, is a real value. It sucks. I would play 3 tight ends this week in a heartbeat if I could, but obviously you can't. So I think this is a game that, just don't get too frisky because there's just so many unknowns.
Yeah, and before I give my 2 cents on Philadelphia and Tampa Bay, Mike, if you're there, can you bring up that comment from Silence? He says, Detroit, why not Pollard over Pacheco? Started to bring the show to a grinding halt, but I was typing it out and it was going to be a paragraph, and it's easier to say it. It's just easier to say it out loud. So why would I not have Tony Pollard over Pacheco? And it's pretty clear to me because I think Kansas City is going to lean on Pacheco until the clock is at zeros. He's going to be getting touches and targets until this game is over.
And 2, which is huge. So he's going to get the receptions too, which has not been the case in years, like basically anytime McKinnon's been around.
Correct. And given my final score, I have the final score 24-20. And there could be a small case of what if this thing goes into overtime, right? And Pacheco's going to be a part of this game in every form and fashion till the clock is at zeros, whether it's at the end of regulation or in overtime, where we have a game where we've seen this game a million times from the Cowboys. They're at home against a little bit less of a team in the Packers, where the fourth quarter just could be out of hand and Tony Pollard is just not in there, and they can trust Rico to carry the ball in the fourth quarter. And again, I have that final score 35-17. So there's going to come a time where Dallas gets up big in this game, and it could be the fourth
Pollard
quarter.
Hasn't had a true monster game all year either, which is the other thing that would concern me, to where Pacheco has had several really big games where he's rushed for like 130, 150 yards. We haven't seen that from Pollard.
Yeah, and I did mention I like Aaron Jones a little bit more over Pacheco, and that's just because the Green Bay Packers, again, are going to be playing from behind, and now that Aaron Jones, he's been out.
Fresh too, man. He's been,
fresh.
He great.
And when this dude plays, he is a stud of a running back, and he's going to be active until this thing is all zeros as well. So to me, it's Aaron Jones, Pacheco, and then Tony Pollard in that order for me. Hopefully it makes sense. And again, Silence, Pacheco, nasty field over Pollard indoors, kind of answering your own question. Nasty field is why
offense. Yeah.
Is why I love Pacheco even more. He's going to be in and active more than Tony Pollard, because again, it's a position where there could be, errors happen when they're handing the ball off. But again, you're talking about Patrick Mahomes, who's damn near a pure perfect.
It's a huge advantage when you know where you're going, which offensive players do on those bad fields. Like that's why they say it's such an advantage to offenses. They know I'm going to go left or go right. The defense has no idea, and that's why they typically trip up. As long as their spikes are right, like these guys.
Correct.
You don't have any issues.
Hopefully that makes sense, and we've explained ourselves. And as we move on, I'll give you my 2 cents in this Philadelphia and Tampa Bay game. Philadelphia, they're 0-6 against the spread, their last 6. And again, spreads are spreads, and so that stuff carries over into real life stuff. So they're 0-6 against the spread, their last 6 games. Tampa Bay 4-1 against the spread, their last 5. And as it stands right now, Tampa Bay is getting +3, and I think Tampa Bay wins this game outright. Crazy. So you're telling me you have Tampa Bay to win outright, and they're getting points. Give me the Tampa Bay Buccaneers +3 all day. They win this one 21-20, and Philadelphia back to the drawing board, as it goes into next season. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they can't run the football, right? They're little stressors. They can't run the football, even though Rachaad White has kind of broke out and he's become a star and a stud at the running back position. But Baker, so far this season, in the regular season, he's been 1-5 against playoff teams. So you're like, well, why Tampa? Baker Mayfield is their quarterback, but you have all this other stuff, in play here, right? You have Philadelphia, this momentous collapse. They have to kind of tuck their tail in between their legs and go to Tampa Bay and play a football game, on Monday Night Football. So give me the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win this one 21-20, which is basically, a dead even, right? It's by 1 point. So to me, I just like the home team a little bit more, given the fact that Philadelphia just can't get it done. So as we wrap up this thing here, Keith, I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, man.
Almost an hour and a half into this thing. We're about 32 minutes away from kickoff in Houston. So we have some time to get our lineups locked in. I'm playing a few Saturday only slates for the heck of it.
I'm doing the same.
So as we get out of here, make sure you can follow me or Keith if you want. Make sure you get to the website at fantasysixpack.net. As promised, me and Keith are going to be running this thing all the way through to the Super Bowl. Hopefully we have everything that we need. And maybe after we get off air today, we'll talk about getting something together and maybe going live for a half an hour, 40 minutes tomorrow before kickoff. And we'll go from there. So I appreciate it.
My day. That's awesome. He says, wish these shows were 3 hours long. Trust me, me and Chris could make that.
They could be, but you know what? I was like, I'll wait. I'm going to have lunch. I'm going to make, a hot gabagool sandwich. I went to the Italian deli yesterday and my mouth is watering. I said, we're only going to be half an hour or 40 minutes. Here we are, an hour and a half in, and it just goes by in the blink of an eye. So before we split, I'll tell you how it is. Give me the Cleveland Browns to win this one, 28-20. Give me the Kansas City Chiefs to win. If you want to grab a pen, 24-20. So Kansas City -3.5 points. Give me the Buffalo Bills to win 31-17. Give me the Buffalo Bills -10.5 if you want. As I said, the Dallas Cowboys win big 35-17. So you could take the Dallas Cowboys -7.5. Shoot, you could do 14.5 if you wanted to. I think we'd still be safe. Give me the final score in the Detroit Rams game to be 31-27. I like the over 51.5 points in the Lions game, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers plus 3.5 points. They will win Monday night 21-20. So if you got any questions or comments, you can find me on Twitter at Detroit Beastie, or you can find Keith on Twitter at Keith Fleming, or you can just get into the Discord, the Fantasy,
which I finally got into, Chris.
Hey,
it only took a year, but they coaxed me and actually taught me how to use it. And I made my first post last night. So I will be in there now. I apologize.
Slack is what stinks to me, but that's where we handle all business and, we're talking in there. But Discord's where it's at. I'll get on there and share some screenshots and stuff for the premium members, and we will move on. So you could probably count on at least me. I know Keith will be in. So we'll be here tomorrow sometime, and follow us on Twitter. We'll let you know the time and place, and we'll be live tomorrow. Joe, good to see you. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
I forgot I'm ending that thing.